You're listening to the Pastors and Pews podcast. I'm your host, Pastor Scott Sharp. We'll be settling into our guest pastor's favorite pew for a conversation about life, ministry, and those things we have in common. Most importantly, we are hearing and sharing stories. Today's guest pastor is Reverend Felicia Hopkins from Amarillo, Texas.
When they first called me and the bishop asked me, I thought, well, why me? You know, I'm a preacher at heart and people, relationships. But I really, and now I know, I was really called for such a time as this. I do believe that in my heart. When I got up here, you know, just to have an African-American presence in our churches in the Panhandle was very different. Not to mention the fact to have a woman, and then what we've been through. I'm a trauma chaplain. Yeah. And so when COVID happened, I just really went back into trauma chaplain mode. You know, assess the damage, see who we have, what do they need, how do we get it to them? And so I was sharing with a friend of mine the other day that I really do think God knew that at this time I needed to be here. And when you go in and you do a good job, thanks be to God, people are like, oh man, forget about color, forget about race. You know, this person is smart and intelligent, but we cannot get over the first hurdle for people to see what's back to where we began the conversation. You can hear my voice before you can see my face. Yeah. So you can look at my resume and say, oh man, proven leader, done this, built this church. Oh yeah, we want this person. And if we could, kind of like the x-ray machine, if we could live like that, realize we got the same bones. And so which set of bones do you want today? Well, I want the strong bones. I don't want the, osteo bones. But that's a long way coming. And there has been progress made. I mean, and I do believe that this time we're in now, even some of my peers, we've been talking, this is a very different kind of time. I do believe that. I believe that people who never stopped to listen before are listening and they're hearing something different. I think people are beginning to ask questions. I had a colleague say to me that they always wanted to say something or ask a question about race, but they didn't want to come off as trying to be that white person with the one white friend, or they just didn't know how to say it. So they didn't want to be embarrassed. So it was easier to be quiet. But like the time that we're in now has kind of taken the top off the lid for a lot of people who had been afraid of being embarrassed, who really just didn't know what to do or what to say, and who themselves didn't really understand the system or white privilege, because they say, oh, I see so-and-so, he's a banker, and so-and-so lives in my neighborhood, and so-and-so's kids go to my school. What are they talking about? Well, they're missing the masses. Yeah. You know, I have to go back home to Buffalo, New York, and walk the streets and see my contemporaries who didn't make it and listen to their stories. You know, to watch my cousin, who's smarter than me, be in prison for 19 years, get out, and because he was on the inside, first is falsely accused, but he was on the inside, that person, start his own computer business that now 10 years later is in New York and San Francisco and Dallas. Wow. But for 19 years, as an African-American male in the wrong place at the wrong time, he lost 20 years of his life.
Yeah, and it seems like there are too many wrong places and too many wrong times. If you're,
well, I think, Scott,
like it's just, again, like the odds are just stacked up against you.
Well, they are. And everybody I know of color, any color, brown people, have all had to fight that. And people tell you, don't go there. Don't get caught over there. Because the wise ones, our elders, already know that there is no right place. But you're young and you're like, hey, I can go anywhere I want to go. This is 2000 and whatever. And they're still looking and saying, no, not yet.